Okay, so I've watched most of Hinkle's debates and I have to say, as much as I can't stand his grift or his lack of personality, I have to commend him on having a game plan, and understanding what victory will look like to the audience he's pandering to. I haven't seen anyone so successfully impose their own frame on their debate opponents, since the days when evolution denier, Kent Hovind, used to debate real scientists who were unprepared to deal with a Gish Gallop full of lies and fallacies, that couldn't possibly be addressed given the equal talk time.
I'm sure this is one of the ones in his fossil proof for evolution, and you're missing such a major point. I don't know if I can help if you can't get this, but no fossils count as evidence for evolution. In a court of law, they would laugh at you because, and I'm here to tell people, I resent everybody's tax dollars going to pay for this voodoo science of evolution to be taught in this university and other universities around the world. Beer is often sold at football games, but beer has absolutely nothing to do with football.
Anyone with basic knowledge on the subject matter could see that Hovind was full of shit, and that his arguments wouldn't pass any sort of peer review. But the audience he was catering to were people who knew virtually nothing about the sciences relevant to evolution, and who, for religious reasons, didn't want to accept evolution. As Scott Weizenhofer famously stated, debating creationists on the topic of evolution is rather like trying to play chess with a pigeon. It knocks the pieces over, craps on the board, and flies back to its flock to claim victory. In any case, since Hinkle will no doubt continue debating people, I have some advice for people who intend to debate him, so that they don't run into the same issue as those scientists, who were operating on a different set of rules than a swindler, who was just there to stuff as many sound bites as he possibly could within his given talk time, and who didn't care about accuracy, or even basic honesty. Here is an example of how his overarching thesis is just a series of talking points intended to bash the squad, and not a coherent narrative. In one instance, he claims that it was important for the squad to try and get concessions in a House bill, even if it failed in the Senate.
I think, they could have gotten votes on given policies. I think they could have gotten Biden's agenda potentially.
To me.
What about, Sam, listen, what about a $15 minimum wage for all Americans? That's not even a progressive agenda item. That's something Biden ran on.
Minimum wage.
Yes.
Not get through the Senate, Jackson.
But don't you think it would be important to at the least get a vote on that in the House?
And remember, that was also the point of force the vote. Supposedly, the failed referendum would have driven the masses, who would have supposedly been paying attention to boring House procedures, instead of trying to get their hands on PlayStation 5s or watching the news regarding the Capitol riots, or otherwise just living their everyday lives to provide food and shelter for their families, to rise up against the quote-unquote establishment. Yet, when Seder suggests that the squad did gain concessions, and that we can see this in the Build Back Better bill that passed through the House, Jason Hinkle writes this off as not mattering because it didn't get through the Senate.
Why didn't they use their leverage?
Why didn't they use their leverage? Now, how do you know that they didn't?
Because they voted for these bills without getting concessions in return.
How do you know?
Because there are no substantive large material changes that we have seen. There's nothing that
what's in
there's
the,
nothing that the squad has been able.
Wait a second. You just made a statement.
You just asked me a question. Let me finish. You
just
asked me a question. Let me finish.
You said there's no.
You just asked me a question. Do you want me to finish answering or not?
Do you know what's in the Build Back Better bill? Do you know what's in the Build Back Better bill?
The one that didn't pass?
Yeah, no, the one that did pass. It passed in the House.
Was it signed into law? I must have missed that.
But Jackson, we're talking about House members, yes?
Well, what is the point of...
Are we talking about House members, or are we talking about people in the Senate?
What is the point?
Are we talking about Joe Manchin, or are we talking about AOC? You said that Joe Manchin is worse than AOC, that AOC is more progressive. They're different people. They're two different houses. You understand how that works.
You want to hear the incredible thing, Sam? You want to hear the... I understand that there are two separate chambers in Congress, Sam. You want to hear the incredible thing?
Hold on for 1 second, Jackson.
So if Hinkle and the other Dore clones were acting in good faith, they'd be lambasting Sinema and Manchin. Instead, Hinkle can't stop making videos about Sam Seder. I mean, I won't even get into what sort of Freudian daddy issues his Twitter header is suggesting. And like Jimmy, he's hoping that AOC will send him some feet pics in exchange for leaving her alone. It's clear these people don't care about any of this. This is all a stunt. Remember, a year ago Hinkle claimed he was going to surpass Azan on Twitch.
But I know Hasm. You don't know my name? I'm going to be the biggest political Twitch streamer. I'm gonna dethrone Hassan, and you don't know my fucking name yet? What the fuck is that?
I know.
I'm gonna make Hassan look like a bitch, and you don't even know my name yet.
How's that going? But I digress. Here are the things you need to know about Hinkle if you're going to debate him. Number 1, Hinkle isn't there to engage in good faith. He's there to overwhelm you with talking points, and he's doing this for sound bites that will give him quote-unquote clout.
I did it for the clout. I do everything for the clout.
Nice.
You will never see me do something not for the clout. That's the
Electoral.
only way I operate. That is the only way I operate. That is the only way I operate.
There is a great flip though. Like,
You don't have any character.
It's pretty obvious that Hinkle has a list, possibly a flowchart of sound bites he has to get in. So don't expect a dialogue. Expect him to ignore your responses, or to respond with a non sequitur, red herring, or accuse you of doing what he's doing, like changing the subject, and otherwise just filibuster until you finally let him move on. For example, here is one of the instances where Hinkle's premise is wrong. He believes that the squad could go on to CNN, and other quote-unquote shit lib outlets to put pressure on Pelosi, in order to gain concessions. Sam begins to point out that this is unlikely to work, because Pelosi is popular with Democratic voters. Hinkle counters with Pelosi's overall approval ratings, which as Sam points out is meaningless because we're talking about a fight happening within the Democratic Party. Hinkle just keeps going, continuing his argument, even though it's based on the false premise that Sam just debunked. Nevertheless, Sam allows him to keep going. Hinkle even claims he's not letting Sam off the hook, when really Sam let him off the hook by allowing him to proceed with an argument that's based on a premise he just debunked.
Or they could have delayed it and renegotiated.
What do you mean delayed it?
They could have told Nancy Pelosi that we are not going to vote for this unless you give us substantive concessions. They could have gone out on CNN and MSNBC on Mehdi Hassan's show and say, I'm not prepared to vote for this bill until we get these concessions that we have listed. Don't you think that that is an effective strategy? And don't you think that's also the strategy that the Justice Democrats initially ran on?
I think that could work on occasion, but I think that Nancy Pelosi, for the most part, is beloved by Democratic voters, for better or for worse.
That's incorrect. She's got a very, very low approval rating. But
it's not true with Democratic primary voters.
Google this up.
Let's look it up, man.
Sam. So you just acknowledged.
Fact check for you, Jackson.
I just said she had no approval rating. Did you not hear what I just said?
Democratic primary voters.
Yeah. Go.
I'm talking about the whole of this country. But Sam, you just said. I don't want to let you off on this. You just said,
Bradley, will you look that up and put it up on
Look it up. I could not, I don't care. So you just said that on occasion you could see how leveraging their power by either withholding their...
This happens again when Hinkle uses the instance of members of GOP House members effectively pushing John Boehner out of the House speakership as an example that the squad can emulate. Cedar correctly points out that there were far more than a handful of GOP House members doing this, so the comparison is invalid. Justin Hinkle simply filibusters and uses the excuse that Sam brought up the fact that this all happened when he was in middle school, to try and avoid Sam's point. He continues to filibuster until Cedar lets him continue his Gish Gallop.
Understand.
No, I wasn't going to bring that up. I was going to bring Boehner up. But the idea is that if they, maybe this has never happened before in Congress. Maybe, hey, Sam, maybe this has never happened before in Congress. Don't you think that they should at least try? Because this was their strategy. When you were in
junior high,
I don't want to talk about
covering every day what John Boehner was doing.
This is very weird.
I can tell you.
This is very weird. I don't want to. What are you doing talking about junior high? I'm talking about the fact you changed subjects.
There was not There was not
changing subjects.
Sophomore members of Congress who eliminated John Boehner.
You were changing subjects.
No, you brought up John Boehner. You brought up John Boehner.
And then you went to this weird analogy about my middle school.
It's not an analogy.
What I'm talking about is the fact that...
That's not what an analogy is.
So you still have not outlined this.
I was saying
you still have not said
very carefully what happened to John Boehner, and none of it went down the way you say it did.
Okay, first of all, that's incorrect. But second of all, you did not acknowledge what I initially questioned to you.
Personally, I think the best way to respond to this is to continue to nail him on the item and insist that he adequately address what you said before moving on. Otherwise, he'll just keep gish galloping to get as many sound bites in as possible, and possibly frustrate you into oblivion. Keep restating that you just answered and refuted his point, and insist on a salient response, or a concession to the point before moving on.
Windows and trenches, dog. There's not even a roof on those, and they still got pulmonary edema in seconds? That's crazy.
chlorine. If you can prove to me how the inspectors, if you can prove to me that chlorine came from those cylinders, this would be a different scenario.
We haven't gotten to that claim yet. The claim you're making right now is that if chlorine was released, wait, please, we can't. Normally, when I talk with guys like you, they start to realize they're out of their depth, and they don't stop talking because they know every additional point is another nail in their grave, okay? We need to get point by point. We're like 1/20th of the way through this. I did way too much reading on this to let you get away with only being owned on 1/10 of the points that I read up on. We're talking about the helicopters, okay? Hold on. So you're saying then that they did have a reason to send helicopters on bombing runs, not chemical bombing runs, but a bombing run, because they were already shelling the city.
Syria, the Syrian government had a long history of shelling Douma in an effort to regain control. But what you are alleging is that chemical cylinders were dropped there.
So again, we're not talking chemical cylinders yet. We're just talking about the act of bombing with a helicopter, which you said they didn't have a reason to. So again, for like the 5th time, you believe then that Assad did have reason to bomb with helicopters, considering he was currently shelling the city, just not with chemical weapons. But you do believe he had a reason to use helicopters to bomb the city. Not with chemical weapons, but just with conventional armaments.
Not necessarily, but the allegation is that those helicopters dropped chemical cylinders.
I know that. Can we take it one claim at a time instead of you trying to run from this one by jumping to the next one? Why would they not have a reason to run helicopter sorties over Douma when they were shelling the city?
Chemical cylinders into the buildings. That is the principal claim.
No, the principal claim we're on right now is whether or not they would even have a reason to bomb the city. So they were already shelling the city. So did they have a reason to bomb it as well? This is yes or no.
Long history of shelling the city. Yes.
They were currently shelling the city.
They had a long history.
They were currently, wait, are you shorting out right now? They were currently on that day, April 7th, 2018, bombing the city, shelling the city. And you said they would have no reason to run a helicopter sortie. Quit running to other points, dude.
Cylinders were dropped from those helicopters.
Oh my, are you broken?
That's your claim. That is your claim. Are you broken?
You need to answer this one, and then we can move to the chemical weapons. Do you believe the Assad government would have had a reason to run a helicopter sortie over that city? You said they didn't, but they were shelling the city at the time.
Not necessarily, but your claim is that...
Wait, why not? Answer that. Why not necessarily? Why would they not be willing to bomb the city when they were currently shelling it and have bombed it many times before?
By allowing him to simply move along, you're allowing him to control the frame. On top of that, if you're going to try in earnest to have a good faith conversation, and your tolerance for bullshit is low, you're going to get flustered, and this is what he wants. He wants clips that he can replay on YouTube and Twitter. Number 2, he'll load his statements with as many claims as possible, so that you can't possibly address them all. Remember, he's not arguing in good faith, and, as I'll point out later, he's always playing offense. This means that he can stuff far more claims in his talk time than you can possibly address, like a sea was trying to shoot down more alien ordnance than it can possibly target within a given time. This is why Sam kept quote-unquote interrupting Hinkle. Unsurprisingly, he wasn't happy about this. Hinkle wants to pack as many bullshit claims into his talk time, and if you try and interrupt him so you can debate one claim at a time, he'll complain that you're interrupting his Gish Gallop. Number 3, he's reading off of a script. You can see Hinkle staring at something, and occasionally, his eyes are moving side to side. It's also likely the reason that his camera miraculously turned off during the debate with Sam Seder. This helps him rapid-fire his vapid talking points. It's best to debate him on a stage and with a moderator. Number 4, he'll choose a narrow topic and avoid defending a position. It's always easier to play offense. This is why Hinkle will only attack and avoid defending a position. In his debate with Sam, his position was that the squad wasn't adequately using their power and that Sam should hold them accountable, apparently by using his channel to engage in the same bad faith attacks that Hinkle and the other Dore clones engage in. Seder assumed that this meant that Hinkle supported primarying squad members, which Hinkle denied. So when Seder suggested that Jason Hinkle preferred the third-party route, he didn't outright refuse, but he also didn't confirm. And why would he? Pointing out that the third-party strategy has failed time and again is an easy layup. We saw this when Hinkle couldn't defend the MPP against a smaller content creator.
You're part of the People's Party, right?
I'm actually a member of them, yeah.
Okay, you're a member of the People's Party. Have you guys had any preparation to primary the hundreds of Democrats that are against Medicare for All? They oppose it completely. Have you guys prepared any campaigns against those people?
I can't speak to that. I'm not a representative of the People's Party. I'm just a member. And though I know Nick Brana, I know a lot of people who are affiliated with them, I don't engage in like day-to-day or week-to-week, operations with them. So I'm really not familiar with everything they're doing. But I support their policies. I support their strategy. And I think they are truth tellers, yeah.
Sure. So when it comes to strategy, do they have ballot access in any state so far?
Yes, I believe
Which
so.
state?
What's that?
Which
they
state?
they have registration access. You can register for parties in certain states now.
But do they have ballot access?
I don't think so. I think you need like a ton of signatures to get ballot access.
That is true. That is fair. That is fair. Absolutely. You do need a ton of signatures to run a party.
I did it for the clout. I do everything for the clout. You will never see me do something
not for the clout.
And this is why the GOP has been caught supporting the Green Party. Because left-wing third parties simply help the GOP. We saw the same thing in Hinkle's debate with Vosh. His only aim was to sow doubt regarding the official claim regarding the gas attack in Doma. He wouldn't bother giving an alternative explanation as to how the gas cylinders got where they were. Why? Because those alleged alternatives are far less likely than the official explanation, which deniers dispute with Sandy Hook truther-like arguments. So, I would say nail him down on an alternative and don't let him just drone on with a premeditated narrative and talking points that he'll have in front of him if you're debating him via live stream. So that's that. And again, even though he's a slimy grifter, dilettante, and silver spoon-fed child that claims to think the squad should have gambled with bills that seriously reduce childhood poverty for something that had no chance of passing, at least he can feign the semblance of a debate and doesn't have to resort to endlessly cussing and yelling.
Yeah. Without blowing up. Yes.
Yeah.
Going to move it on a little bit. Where did men come from?
Men evolved out of lower species in the way that all the species evolved out of lower species.
This is ridiculous. This is ludicrous. If he wants to believe this happened, he's welcome to believe his grandpa was Lucy and came down from his tree or something. But that is pure religion.
So you saying we ain't come down from monkeys?
No, monkeys are still having babies. Why don't they have another human today?
We're Homo sapiens, and that's about 8 steps down.
I ain't. I just want to make clear, because this is going out on the TV or whatever, that I don't do that stuff. I ain't got nothing against it.
Oh, it's the homo that threw him off. I mean, explain that.
It is a scientific nomenclature that describes who we are as part of a phyla or a stream of, it goes hominid, hominoid, and then we go
whatever.
through.
There's different names for it.
We're all Homo sapiens.
All humans would be considered.
My wife is a Homo sapien.
But that's not homosexual.
We're all
That's what the difference is.
Yeah, well, it's just a way of describing who we are.
Well, that's it. I just want to make clear your respect for coming on, and I ain't going to treat you differently now that has come out. That's safe.
No, it has nothing
to do.
Come on now, you're confused here. Let's settle the confusion. All of people in the whole world, the biologists have in a group called Homo. And the particular human group below that is sapiens. And all that is Greek. It just means the Greek word for man smart.
Yeah, a lot of them is very talented.
It has nothing to do with homosexuals. It has nothing to do with the homos that you meet on the street. It's an entirely different lingo.
But
my point is...
So is you one of the homo lot?
I am a homo sapien. I think all humans are homo sapiens. You are too. Okay? You are too.
Yo.
The term homo and homo sapien has nothing at all to do with sex.
All right. Let's talk about when technology goes horribly wrong.